Section 7 of The Cricket on the Hearth by Charles Dickens. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information, or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recorded by Jason Isbell. The Cricket on the Hearth by Charles Dickens. Chirp the Third. The Dutch clock in the corner struck 10 when the carrier sat down by his fireside, so troubled and grief-worn that he seemed to scare the cuckoo, who, having cut his 10 melodious announcements as short as possible, plunged back into the Moorish palace again and clapped his little door behind him, as if the unwonted spectacle were too much for his feelings. If the little haymaker had been armed with the sharpest of scythes, and had cut at every stroke into the carrier's heart, he never could have gashed or wounded it as Dot had done. It was a heart so full of love for her, so bound up and held together by innumerable threads of winning remembrance, spun from the daily workings of her many qualities of endearment. It was a heart in which she had enshrined herself so gently and so closely, a heart so single and so earnest in its truth, so strong in right, so weak in wrong, that it could cherish neither passion nor revenge at first, and had only room to hold the broken image of its idol. But slowly, slowly, as the carrier sat brooding on his heart, now cold and dark, other and fiercer thoughts began to rise within him, as an angry wind came rising in the night. The stranger was beneath his outraged roof. 3 steps would take him to his chamber door. 1 blow would beat it in. "You might do murder before you know it," Tackleton had said. How could it be murder if he gave the villain time to grapple with him hand to hand? He was the younger man. It was an ill-timed thought, bad for the dark mood in his mind. It was an angry thought, goading him to some avenging act that should change the cheerful house into a haunted place, which lonely travelers would dread to pass by night, and where the timid would see shadows struggling in the ruined windows when the moon was dim, and hear wild noises in the stormy weather. He was the younger man. Yes, yes. Some lover who had won the heart that he had never touched, some lover of her early choice, of whom she had thought and dreamed, for whom she had pined and pined, when he had fancied her so happy by his side. Oh, agony to think of it! She had been above stairs with the baby, getting it in bed, as he sat brooding on the hearth. She came close beside him, without his knowledge. In the turning of the rack of his great misery, he lost all other sounds, and put her little stool at his feet. He only knew it when he felt her hand upon his own, and saw her looking into his face. With wonder? No, it was his first impression, and he was fain to look at her again, to set it right. No, not with wonder, with an eager and inquiring look, but not with wonder. At first it was alarmed and serious, then it changed into a strange, wild, dreadful smile of recognition of his thoughts. Then there was nothing but her clasped hand at his brow, and her bent head and falling hair. Though the power of omnipotence had been his to wield at that moment, he had too much of its diviner property of mercy in his breast to have turned 1 feather's weight of it against her. But he could not bear to see her crooning down upon the little seat where he had often looked on her with love and pride, so innocent and gay. And when she rose and left him, sobbing as she went, he felt it a relief to have the vacant place beside him rather than her so long cherished presence. This in itself was an anguish keener than all, reminding him how desolate he has become, and how the great bond of his life was rent asunder. The more he felt this, and the more he knew he could have better borne to see her lying prematurely dead before him with her little child upon her breast, the higher and the stronger rose his wrath against his enemy. He looked about him for a weapon. There was a gun hanging on the wall. He took it down and moved a pace or two toward the door of the perfidious stranger's room. He knew the gun was loaded. Some shadowy idea that it was just to shoot this man like a wild beast seized him, and dilated in his mind until it grew into a monstrous demon in complete possession of him, casting out all milder thoughts and setting up its undivided empire. That phrase is wrong. Not casting out his milder thoughts, but artfully transforming them, changing them into scourges to drive him on, turning water into blood, love into hate, gentleness into blind ferocity, her image souring, humbled, but still pleading to his tenderness and mercy with relentless power, never left his mind. But staying there, it urged him to the door, raised the weapon to his shoulder, fitted and nerved his finger to the trigger, and cried, "Kill him in his bed." He reversed the gun to beat the stock against the door. He already held it lifted in the air. Some indistinct design was in his thoughts of calling out to him to fly, for God's sake, by the window. When suddenly the struggling fire illuminated the whole chimney with a glow of light, and the cricket on the hearth began to chirp. No sound he could have heard, no human voice, not even hers, could so have moved and softened him. The artful words in which she had told him of her love and for this same cricket were once more freshly spoken. Her trembling, earnest manner at the moment was again before him. Her pleasant voice, oh, what a voice it was for making household music at the fireside of an honest man, thrilled through and through his better nature, and awoke it into life and action. He recoiled from the door, like a man walking in his sleep, awakened from a frightful dream, and put the gun aside. Clasping his hands before his face, he then sat down beside the fire and found relief in tears. The cricket on the hearth came out into the room and stood in fiery shape before him. "I love it," said the fairy voice, repeating what he well remembered, "for the many times I have heard it, and the many thoughts its harmless music has given me." "She said so," cried the carrier. "True. This has been a happy home, John, and I love the crickets for its sake." "It has been, heaven knows," returned the carrier. "She made it happy, always, until now. So gracefully sweet-tempered, so domestic, joyful, busy, and light-hearted," said the voice. "Otherwise I never could have loved her as I did," returned the carrier. The voice, corrected him, said, "do." The carrier repeated, "as I did," but not firmly. His faltering tongue resisted his control, and would speak in its own way for itself and him. The figure, in an attitude of invocation, raised its hand and said, "Upon your own hearth." "The hearth she has blighted," interposed the carrier. "The hearth she has, how often, blessed and brightened," said the cricket. "The heart which, but for her, would only a few stones and bricks and rusty bars, but which has been, through her, the altar of your home, on which you have nightly sacrificed some petty passion, selfishness, or care, and offered up the homage of a tranquil mind, a trusting nature, and an overflowing heart, so that the smoke from this poor chimney has gone upward with a better fragrance than the